Alright boys, here we go. Round 7 of the NEPG series, Lead Belt Enduro in Park Hills, Missouri. First time I've ever been to Missouri. Pretty awesome place. This race is held in an old lead mine, or mineral mine, and it's very, very strange. Conditions started out super dusty. It hadn't rained in a couple weeks according to the locals, but we saw this big storm edge rolling in, and it led to some tricky conditions later on when the rain actually did start. You can see how dusty it is right away. The big thing about this track is the rocks. There's a lot of rocks, and that was like the big feature, the big thing everybody was worried about were the rocks. But I've never been to a place where you get to ride every kind of terrain all at the same time. So this place had dust, and then the dust got wet and turned into mud. There were flat rocks, super jagged, like baby head, softball sized rocks, roots, sand, big rock gardens. It had everything. It was the most inclusive riding terrain I've ever been in all at the same time. The woods were never super tight. This place is a OHV facility, so these were all established trails, and I don't know if they were just doing a dirt bike specific or ATV. Some of them were ATV trails for sure, and then some of them seemed a little bit tighter. There's barely any fresh cut trail that I saw. I should have made the pass there. Me and the guy in front of me in the black and yellow gear went back and forth a lot, and I don't know why, because I'm faster than he is and was all day, and we only went back and forth because I would make some dumb mistake and he'd get around me, or I would be off my pace and he would move around me. I'm still fighting this like mental state kind of issue I'm having where I lose focus really easily. So I'll be riding, pushing by myself, and I feel really good, and then all of a sudden I'm not thinking about riding anymore. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. And not in a way where I'm like making mistakes, but it's just where I come off my pace. And I'm not sure why that's happening, but it happened a lot. Even this guy in front of me said something about it. He said, "What's going on?" He said, "You're faster when you get on it. You're way faster than me. Why are you slowing down so much?" And I had no answer for him. I couldn't really tell him anything. So because of the rocks and how loose everything was, deflection was a big deal. You were hopping all over the place this whole race, just bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. And so you'd be just cooking down the trail, and all of a sudden you'd get bounced off. And it happened to me more than one time, and it happened to everybody else I talked to about this ride. They were saying, yeah, it's just you'd be going along, and all of a sudden something you don't see just bounces you off into nowhere, and you end up in the worst line you can be in, or off in the woods somewhere. And talk about that change in terrain. So we come down out of the woods, drop into what looks like a creek bed or like a flood area with a lot of rocks, and then it just opens up. This place, when it opened up, was like the desert. It was just big expanses of rocks and sand, and it was deep sand too. So when it was dry, it was that steer with the ass end and no front brakes kind of sand. When it got more damp from the rain, it became like the best traction you could have, because it was just the perfect texture of sand to provide really good grip. You can see how good the trail was. It was just a great flow, and didn't really, other than being rocky and a little difficult, it was a really good trail. The other thing I noticed, and something I've got to figure out, is how to manage my goggles. So when it rained, I run just standard goggles with tear-offs, and the rain water would get between my tear-offs, and I would have obscured vision, and my speed drops off so bad when I can't see something. And not just even a little bit, like if I get a little bit of fog in my goggles, my speed drops off. And in every test except for test 4 and test 5, I pulled my goggles off this race. Which isn't good, I know. I just can't seem to help it. It's the only way I can see, and the only way that I can maintain the speed I need to maintain to try and finish where I want to finish. And more of that high-speed sand took us through a section that was like built-in, bermed switchbacks. It was a lot of fun. like I said, it changes terrain so quick, so it goes from sand to baby head rocks, which this is just a long, strewn out field of riprap sized rocks. And you pick a line and lean back a little bit and pin it and hope you don't get bounced off into space. And then just back into the woods wherever it's dusty and rooty and all the other terrain that you can experience on a dirt bike all at the same time. The big black square is tape I was using to hold on a visor extension, extra lens, to keep water off my GoPro because of how ominous the sky looked, and when it did rain it helped, but for the camera view it kind of screwed stuff up for that corner. Felt really good all day. It only hit the ground one time and it was a dumb mistake. The big thing that was different for this race was at Little Brown Jug I blew my EXP ring and my Recluse apart, so I was back on a standard full manual clutch. And it's been about a year since I've ridden just a regular manual clutch, and it was a little bit of a learning curve just getting back to where I needed to be. And I didn't realize how right everybody was when they were saying stuff like, hey, you're riding in a gear too high, or just, I was getting lazy with my clutch work. And now moving back to the manual clutch, I can see why it's better. The Recluse has its place, but for this kind of stuff, it's not appropriate. You don't get the right kind of launch you need. You can't, shoot your bike up over obstacles and stuff. For me, the standard clutch is better in Enduros in the 350 than the Recluse was. This is test 2. The rain, it rained a little bit, but it wasn't really significant rain. It was just, a little bit of drizzle, kind of like the tail edge of the storm that was coming. But you can see how dark it is because that green light that's on my left side is my map light on my handlebars. And it was actually very, very distracting. Like, it was almost providing a weird contrast for your vision because there was this hot spot all the time down in the corner of your vision that you couldn't look away from. And some people were saying they were like turning their map switches over to make it so that it wasn't shining so bright in their eyes. And like that obscured vision thing, if it gets really dark, we don't have any lights, so you're just running what you can see, and everybody kind of slows down. This section was cool, but it was weird off-camera and loose, so it was a little sketchy to try and carry a bunch of speed here because I was worried I was going to get yeeted off into the water, and I really didn't want to go swimming. This guy was the same guy that was in front of me in Little Raccoon. He was a good tow for me. He's a 40A rider, and when I could get behind him and stay consistent, I can stay with him, and I felt like he was pulling me along really well. It was just that mental game where I just couldn't stay in the right state of mind to stay with him the whole time, keep the right kind of inputs happening and not make the mistakes that I needed to not make. And then the rain started, and it rained hard for a long time. And all that silty, dusty crap that we were riding in turned into ice, slick mud, and eventually became kind of tacky. And the beginning of test 3 was this open sand section, and after having rained, it was really good because you got all this traction. And I like this kind of sand. Damp sand is fun to ride in because it provides all the traction. Your tire style and selection doesn't matter. You can run whatever PSI, whatever. It's just fun to ride in. And then we're into the woods, and you can't tell from the GoPro, but that top layer of dirt is so slick. It was like shiny, and it made for interesting traction issues where you were riding through an off-camber section, and where it would have been silty and slick before, it was now muddy and slick, which made it, a different kind of challenge to ride in. But goes along with the whole idea that we saw every kind of riding terrain and condition you could see all at the same time, minus freezing temperatures and snow. and I almost died right there. So come over the hill, hit a slick spot, and start sliding, like, handlebars all the way to the block, chest to the bar, sliding headfirst toward the hole. And something I hit snapped my bars right into the right position and got under the power again, and it saved me from going headfirst into a hole. Now all those dry slick rocks are wet slick rocks, which, like I said, makes for a ton of fun trying to keep your grip and momentum going and adapting to different riding conditions all the time. So this race was 6 tests, and B riders were only required to do 5, but my general outlook on these races is, hey, I drove 12 hours to go ride, I'm doing all of the riding. And the last test of this race had a really cool section in test 6 where you were riding down a waterfall, and it was like a tiered step down waterfall. And I'm actually going to put a link to Keith Mitchell's video where he shows test 6. He's a 30A rider, from one of the guys I travel with, and you can see his video and how cool it is for that waterfall section. I had to miss it actually because I ended up ripping one of the middle knobs off my tire and separating my sidewall, like splitting the sidewall of my tire wide open, so I couldn't run any pressure, and I ended up running all of test 5 with this destroyed tire, hoping that it wouldn't rip off my rim. And thank God for tubeless that it could hold that tire in place long enough for me to survive test 5 and not have to DNF because I had a bad mechanical failure or something like that. But I am bummed that I missed test 6 because I was kind of looking forward to going to do it because it was the thing that everybody had said, watch out in this race for the waterfall, watch out for the waterfall. And I like that hard enduro style riding, that's what they said. It was kind of like a hard enduro-ish connector set. It was big rocks and rock gardens and this waterfall test. That was something I missed. This is coming up to the end. It was a really good race. I finished 8th in 30B. Like I said, I've got that mental block or whatever's going on with me where I can't keep my focus, but I'm working on that. Next race is in Indiana, and then I miss Oklahoma, and the last one in Alabama, but we'll see you in Indiana. Peace.